Okay, so let's leave where we left off. Basically, we created the scaffolding. We created a new app in Rails. We created our first scaffold um, for our survey app. And so I'm in my survey app directory, and I'm going to launch the Rails server. Again, that's the command Rails S. And we'll go to localhost 3000. And you'll notice that our front page still isn't is still our Rails splash page. If we go to localhost 3000/surveys, it'll work and it'll pull up our app, but that's a function of what's called our routes. So we're going to reroute our app so that when we go to the root, just the localhost 3000, it'll go actually to surveys. Okay, a little bit confusing, but we'll start to get a hang of this as we keep going through and building more. So to get to our route file, we go to our config folder and we go to routes. And so right now we don't really have any routes. So what we'll do is we will set our root directory to, I believe, surveys here, and this is going to be a function of me not really remembering how to code all of this. So set root directory route in Rails. So you'll get to see how I Google through things, so that you can also learn to Google through things as well. So here we go. So root space surveys index. So what we're going to do is we're going to, instead of pulling up this, when we hit our root, instead of pulling up the splash page, we're going to pull up the index page, which is a page of all of the responses. And that actually isn't what we wanted. If we go back to our initial survey, the completed version of this first little app, what we actually wanted is the form to come up when we go to the root, and not the list of all the survey responses. So to change that, we can, instead of setting our index, we need to set something else. And let me show you a little trick, and you can follow along as well. So let's open up a new terminal, and we're going to move into our app directory. And what we'll do is we'll do a command called rake routes. And what you'll be able to see here is all of the different routes for what you've created so far in your app. So we want to create a new survey. So we really want this route, survey $new instead of index. So I'm going to change this to new. And when we refresh, it takes us to the new survey, just like we wanted here. So great, we changed our route. That's important. We changed our route. Let's see. The next thing we'll do then is we'll add some styles to match the styles of our finished app. And to do that, we're going to install a gem called Bootstrap. So if we go to, if you just Google gem Bootstrap Rails, Click the first link, it's the GitHub link. And this GitHub actually has really great documentation for using Bootstrap in Rails. So what we'll do is we'll copy these two lines here. We'll go into our gem file, and I'm just going to clean this up a little bit because we don't really need all of the comments. So you don't have to do this, but I would recommend doing it because I just like to work with clean code. Just delete all of that. Okay. And then what we'll do is right at the bottom here, clean this up. Oops. And if you don't want to do that, that's fine. All I'm doing is removing all the comments. The things that aren't colored are just comments. So what we'll do is we'll paste our gem bootstrap Sass in our gem Sass Rails. And I think we already have Sass Rails. Yep, we already do. So we just need Bootstrap to add the Bootstrap. So just add the first line here. And what Bootstrap is you can research it on your own, but it is as they say, the most popular what's it say? HTML, CSS, and JavaScript library in the world. It's basically a framework that gives you some built-in styles that are really helpful when you're building an app, because it gives you don't have to style every single component of your app. You can use the default Bootstrap styles, and then customize them as you continue on. So basically what it will do is it'll give you a series of, and I'll show you, it'll give you a series of HTML classes that you can add to your app, and then it'll automatically have CSS based on those classes. So if you just take a look at navbar, for example, you can use their default navbar just by using one of their default navbar classes. I'm trying to find, yeah, here we go, CSS. The CSS page. So if you wanted to, for example, make a table, you would just add the class table to any table, and it would default to look like this, as opposed to, so if we go to our table, there's no styling at all. We could just add one class to our table and it would automatically style like this, which is significantly better, I would say. Okay, so enough about Bootstrap, let's install it. So you need to add Bootstrap to your gem file. We need to import Bootstrap styles in our application.scss. So what we're going to do is we're going to click the app folder, and we're going to go to assets. And then assets are where your external files will be housed. Images, JavaScript, style sheets. So we'll go to our style sheets folder, and we'll go to application.css. What we do need to do is rename this. So if you right click and click rename this to SCSS. That way you can, that way these imports will work properly. So what we can do now is import these at the bottom of our SCSS. And then it also says, make sure it's SCSS. Then remove all of the require self, require tree statements from the Sass file. Okay, so we're going to remove all this and save. And then we also need to save our gem file. Okay, And then the last thing we need to do is we need to grab the JavaScript library, and we're going to go into assets, JavaScripts, and then application.js. And we're going to, right after required tree, add our jQuery and Bootstrap sprockets requirements. Okay, so we've got all of our infrastructure in. Whenever you change your gem file, make a change to your gem file, you need to do what's called a bundle update or bundle install. So we're going to do bundle space install in our command line, and that will install the new gems. So if we look, we should be able to find, there's Sass, there's Bootstrap. Okay. And then usually whenever you make a change to either your gem file or your database, you're going to want to restart your server. So you can Control-C to stop the server from running, and then Rails-S again to start the server over again. Okay, so we should be okay still. And it doesn't like the require jQuery. So let's figure out why it doesn't like the require jQuery. Maybe because we don't have jQuery. Let's see. Yep, we don't have jQuery. So let's, we need to add the jQuery gem. So if we Google Rails gem jQuery, we will find hopefully what we're looking for. Nope. Let's go to Ruby Gems. Let's just, so we're in Ruby Gems, we're just going to type in jQuery. Oops. jQuery. So we'll click the first one, jQuery Rails, and we will, here's the gem file. We'll copy this, gem jQuery Rails. I'm going to include this right here, and then I'm going to save, and then I'm going to bundle update or bundle install again. Bundle install. So you'll notice it says 18 gem files now. It added the jQuery, installed the jQuery to our app. So that should take care of this. Nope, of course it doesn't. So let's figure out why this is happening. So you're kind of going to get a insight into how to troubleshoot too. So when things like this happen, I like to just Google the error and then follow it by the word Rails. See if we can't find a solution. So I've got jQuery Rails. Maybe I need to just restart my server one more time. Because after we installed jQuery Rails, we forgot to restart our server. So Control-C and then Rails-S. And let's try one more time. Yay, there we go. So that fixed it. So we've got Bootstrap all installed now. Let me show you how great it is. So the first thing we can do is we can style our index page. And so the index page can be seen in views, surveys, index, index.html.erb. And basically what we can do is if we wanted to use the default table, we could add the class table to any table. So if we just said table class table, it already looks significantly better. So that's the beauty of Bootstrap, is it can quickly, really quickly style things. And then we could, if we really wanted to get fancy, we could do striped rows. So we could do table striped to any table row within T-body. So if we did, I think we did table dash striped. There we go. So you see how it's every other row is now striped. So that's great. We can do similar things on the show page and the form page. So let's start with our form page. So if you go to _form.html.erb, what we can do is we can go into our Bootstrap forms, and we can do a few things. So form control sets all of these things to a width of 100%, so that's pretty good looking. So let's add form control and also wrap labels and controls in form group for optimum spacing. So let's, instead of div class field, let's change all of the fields to form groups. So anytime you have a group of labels and the corresponding field, you might want to wrap them in a div called form group. So we can refresh and we can see there's better spacing. It's not great, but there's better spacing. And then we can also, let's see what else. We can put form control on all of our fields. So if we take this text area, we can put, after the survey name, we can do class : form control. So that adds a class. That's how you add a CSS or a HTML class to Ruby, is comma. So you use commas to separate arguments, comma, class, : form control. So the new label should be 100% width. Perfect. And we actually changed this last time. Let's change it back to enter your name. That's better. Great. So let's see. Let's look back at our, so we actually need these to be radio buttons and drop downs instead of, as they are now, just allowing the user to enter the data. So how do we add a radio button? Well, we Google it. So we go Rails, radio button. And I am going to go to Stack Overflow. I really like Stack Overflow as opposed to some of the other documentation, because the check mark tells you that if it worked or not, and so that's super helpful. So I'm just going to use this radio button example, and I'm going to change some of the variables. So our variable now is laptop, so that's good to know. All I did was replace it and copy and paste this solution in. So a couple things that you'll notice. We have form.label instead of f.label, so we got to change the f's to form. I prefer f, but the default is form. And I'll show you why. So up top here, as we are creating the form, every time we have a form variable, this little piece of code here, do form, is telling us how to define that variable. So instead of, sometimes it says sometimes people like to use do f instead of form, so it would be f.label. So this person had f.label. And so form label for laptop. So that's our main label. So we could add our own, do you own a laptop? So comma, and then in quotes, you can add in what you want the actual label to be. And then for yes, we would do value yes, value true, and then for the actual radio button, we would do laptop, and then at comma, the next argument is whatever you want it to be. So I want it to be yes instead of true. Okay. So we're going to change this to laptop. We're going to change this to laptop, and value false, laptop, no. And then this checked true argument is whether or not you want it default checked true. So you could put none on them, or you can put it on the yes. So if we refresh, we've got our radio buttons. Let's see if it works. I'm going to say no. I'm going to test it. And so it should come up as no. Yep. And if we edit it, we can test it again. Yes. And it comes up as yes. Great. So our radio button is working. Let's see. Now we need a drop down. So I'm just going to Google Rails drop down menu, and I'm going to find a good example. See if I can't find a good example. Yeah, I think this is what I want, custom options. So I'm going to copy this option, and I'm going to delete our OS. And again, we need to remember to change this to form instead of F. And our variable is OS. And our options are, let's say Mac OS X, Windows 10, Windows 7 or below, and Linux. Let's see if that worked. So we'll save that. We'll refresh. All right, that's working. So let's see if it works. We can test again. I'm going to say yes, I own a laptop and I have Windows 7 or below. Create survey, and that worked. And let's test it one more time. I'm going to try to just switch it to Linux and see if that worked. Yep. So all of our drop downs and our radio buttons are indeed working as we want them to work, which is great. So really the only thing we have to do is kind of style. I'll style the rest of this form, and then I'll let you play around on your own to mess with some Bootstrap styles and some custom CSS. But other than that, I think this thing is ready to roll. So let's what should we do? Let's put the entire form in a container div. So that it's not smushed up against the side. Let's Oh, let's see if we can customize a button. Bootstrap buttons. Let's see. Let's use a cool colored button. So primary is BTN, BTN primary. Those are the classes you want to add. So in order to add a class to a submit button, you have to actually change the text of the submit button. So submit your response. Don't know why. It's kind of a weird, I'm sure there's a good reason for it. And then comma class, and then we'll go BTN, BTN default. Or no, BTN primary. So that should make it a blue button. Yep. Cool. We're looking way fancier. And what else have we not styled? We have not styled the show. So we can go to show.html. What we can do is we can just put it in a container as well, so that it's not bumped up, and we can, I'm good, we're good. You can change this if you'd like, just to play around and learn more on how to customize. So that's pretty much it. We've got our survey, it works, we tested it out. All of the different parts of it work. You can yeah, so I think we're good. Oh, you know what I failed to do is there's no blank option for our drop down. So that's bad UX. So if you don't own a laptop, there should be a blank option. So let's do that real quick. So blank option in select. Let's see what Stack Overflow has for us. That's not what we want. Okay, so it looks like you can just add, so if we go into our form, we can just add no OS is our default option. There we go. So at least that's an option. So if we can click no and then click submit, it will default to no OS. Okay, great. That's it. We've built our first very super basic Rails app. In the next video, what we'll do is we'll deploy the app on Heroku.